Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning at our Port Coquitlam Transit Center. And I first want to give a special welcome to some folks joining us here this morning. POCO City Councilor Glenn Pollock, as well as West Vancouver District Councilor Marianne Booth. And we have Coquitlam City Councilor Chris Wilson. So thank you for joining us here this morning for this event. And of course, I'd like to also thank and introduce Mayor Greg Moore from Port Coquitlam, who will follow me in my remarks, and Catherine Ackerman, Chair of the TriCity Chamber of Commerce, who will follow Mayor Moore in our remarks. And then we'll take any questions that you may have. I'd also like to thank the great men and women of the POCO Transit Center. Folks, thanks for hosting us here this morning and bringing out the sun. Way to go, particularly Operations Manager Dave Doney and Maintenance Manager Jerry Herbert. I was out here just a number of weeks ago. It was not quite this kind of nice day out here, guys, so you brought out. But thanks for hosting us here at the Transit Center. We're here to make a very important announcement this morning regarding TransLink's BLine service. This announcement is an integral step that will make transit a more attractive option for people across 11 communities right here in our region. And it is an integral part to the transit plan that we were busy rolling out starting last year, and we have high hopes for continued improvements in short order in our transit program in the Lower Mainland. As you know, as you probably know, we have 3 BLines in operation today in this region. What are BLines? BLines are high frequency, limited stop routes. They use these 60-foot articulated coaches, and they operate on very, very busy active corridors, and they have been a huge success for our region so far. For example, the 99 BLine, launched in 1996 along the Broadway corridor in Vancouver, has become the busiest route in Canada and the United States, which is sometimes hard to imagine here in Vancouver. It operates as frequently as every 3 minutes during the peak period. On an average weekday last fall, the 99 BLine carried some 61,000 people during the course of the day, which is double that of any other route in the region. And to put that in context, that's more people that can fit in BC Place. In Surrey, the more recent example of the 96 BLine has been a similar success. Since its launch in 2013, just over 4 years ago, ridership on this route has grown 77% during the weekdays and over 100% on weekends. Given this demand, it shouldn't be any surprise that those 2 routes will eventually be replaced by rapid transit, the Millennium Line extension along Broadway and the first phase of the Surrey light rail transit program. And the most recent BLine, the 95 BLine between Vancouver and SFU along Hastings, was launched just a year ago at the same time that the Evergreen SkyTrain extension was implemented. Thanks to reduced stops, customers have enjoyed more reliable service, and travel time has been reduced by 10 minutes. It is very clear to us that BLine works. And I'm pleased to announce that by the end of next year, we will be adding 4 new BLines to our family of services in our region that will provide more frequent, more reliable service in these key corridors and generate significant new ridership based on our experience with BLine in the past. And as I mentioned before, it's an integral part of the rollout of the first phase of the Mayor's vision for transit improvement in our region. Where are these 4 BLines? The 4 BLines will be located as follows. First, on Low Heat Highway between Coquitlam Central Station and downtown Maple Ridge. On Marine Drive on the North Shore, connecting the Phibbs Exchange, Lonsdale Quay, and Park Royal and Dunderave. In Vancouver on 41st Avenue, running between Joyce Collingwood SkyTrain Station and UBC. And lastly, on Fraser Highway, connecting Langley City Centre and Surrey Central SkyTrain Station. Together, these new BLines will provide service frequency of at least 10 minutes during the peak period and 15 minutes during the off-peak period. They will deliver high-frequency transit service within walking distance of some 330,000 jobs and residents, benefiting citizens and businesses along these routes and corridors. The services will run at least 18 hours a day. And with these 4 new BLines, we'll be more than doubling the BLine network. Now, the BLine program is absolutely essential to our multimodal future. SkyTrain, light rail, BLines, frequent transit network, buses, community shuttles, you name it, our Handy Dart service. This is all part of the package to improve mobility in our region and increase the number of people being able to get to and fro on our transit system. Of course, there is much pent-up demand, and that is why we are rolling out these services now. That's why we are busy delivering on all of our promises on the first phase of the mayor's plan. We need to do this to accommodate the growth in our region and help reduce congestion. This comes forward in our ridership numbers alone. We've reported before, last year transit ridership grew by almost 6% to hit 407 million boardings during the course of the year on all of our services. That record-breaking number represents about a 22.5 million increase in boardings over 2016, where we also saw a 4.5% increase in ridership. And in fact, our ridership growth in this region is largely without precedent anywhere in North America. Most urban areas in North America are seeing stagnant or declining transit ridership. Something special is happening in our region. Over the next 30 years, we expect to welcome some 1.2 million additional residents and over 500,000 jobs in our region. We need to continue to make progress. Thanks to the leadership of the Mayor's Council and the provincial government and the federal government, we're well on our way to making this plan real. We are able to plan and deliver a transit system that will help ensure our region retains the livability it is known for throughout the world. With today's announcement of more BLines, we're taking a step in the right direction. Currently, we are out visiting city councils to provide more detail on the BLines. We were out in the city of North Vancouver last night in Langley City, for example, briefing those councils on the BLine program. And next month, we'll be reaching out to residents and citizens in those areas to get their feedback on the BLine alignment and the different features associated with BLine. There will be online opportunities as well as in-person opportunities for citizens to have their say. We'll have more details for you in the next few weeks. And with that, it's my pleasure to pass it on to Mayor Greg Moore of Port Coquitlam.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today, and this is very exciting for all of our cities in this region, whether you're one of the 11 communities that will see a new improved BLine service or you're one of the others, because as we know, people in this region move from city to city to city all over the place. And so these new BLine buses will affect everyone. When we were developing the mayor's 10-year vision in transit and transportation in this region, there was a lot of focus on the rail projects, on the Patello Bridge, on overall Handy Dart and other services. But one of the things that didn't go very well noticed was the new BLine buses that we were going to put into the region. These are really able to connect some of the suburban communities into the rail network, allow a frequent transit system so that as a bus rider, I can tell you, if you don't have to memorize a bus schedule because you know the bus is going to come every 5 or 7 or 8 minutes, it makes using transit that much more usable for everyone. You just show up at the bus stop and you know that the bus is going to come, and if you just miss it, you're okay because the next one's right behind it and you can connect into the system. This is absolutely a game changer for our communities. For us in Port Coquitlam, with the new Phase 1 services and the rollout of the Evergreen line, we saw our downtown Port Coquitlam become a frequent transit network. So buses are leaving there every 5 minutes to connect in with the Evergreen line, which has been an absolute change for our community, the first time ever. Now when you add a BLine service to connect Coquitlam to Maple Ridge, the North Shore, Vancouver, and out to Langley, we are going to start to see a big transition from people having the ability to get out of their cars and take transit. Right now, in many of those communities that are outlying, there just isn't the ability because of the frequency, because of the length of the time that it takes to have an efficient, competitive competition to the car. This will be that change that is required. The other thing that is exciting, I think, for us in municipalities where these B-lines will be coming in, we're designing our communities in cooperation with Metro Vancouver around Metro 2040 to ensure that when we develop these frequent transit networks like the Lougheed Highway, like the North Shore, like the Fraser Highway, that we're going to have the rapid bus along it. We're then going to create our communities, and the importance of having community dialogue around where the bus stations are going to go so that we can build density around them and we can build networks where people can live maybe without a car in the suburbs, something that's new for a lot of people, which also helps with the affordability of this region, because if you live in certain parts of this region, you might be able to get more affordable housing, more affordable rental, but you're forced to have a car. Well, that just increases the overall cost of living. We know through the studies that we've done, if you can live close to a frequent transit network, whether it's by rail or by a B-line, you can save money and you can create more affordability for your household. The other thing is that, as Kevin talked about with the B-lines, where we see the 99 B-line in Vancouver and the B-line in Surrey, those are the preludes to rail in the future. Those are where you build up the ridership and the density along those corridors. So when you're looking to the future to convert from a B-line bus because it's at capacity or over capacity, the next place to go is to have rail, where you can even increase the capacity more. So places like Port Coquitlam and Maple Ridge and the North Shore, where we want to see rail eventually, this is that first phase into getting there. So this is an exciting day for all of us around the region, and we're looking forward to having those buses on the road so that our residents have an option to take transit or their car to get around this region. So thank you for allowing me to say a few words, and now I'd like to introduce Catherine Ackerman, from the President of the TriCity Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Mayor Moore, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. The announcement of these new B-lines is exciting news for our region and great news for businesses and the communities in the Tri-Cities. The new B-line coming next year between Coquitlam Central Station and Maple Ridge will provide high-frequency service that will make significant differences to our region. It will be much easier for people and businesses to connect with both Tri-Cities businesses and the neighboring municipalities to the east. As the voice of business in the Tri-Cities, one of our key mandates at the TriCity Chamber of Commerce is to promote the fantastic livability of our region. We know that this is the best place to work, live, and play. The B-line suits our objective. By expanding transit structure and creating a more livable region, we will continue to attract jobs, investment, and talent to our area. By increasing access to jobs in the Tri-Cities, it enables our employers to tap into a larger workforce. Our businesses are currently experiencing one of the most challenging labor markets in over a decade, and we welcome the opportunity for our employers to maximize their connection with potential talent. In turn, employees have access to the great places to work here in the Tri-Cities. A new B-line means frequent bus service along key corridors, bringing people and businesses within closer reach. This will allow our businesses to showcase their goods and services to a more extensive client base. Just over a year ago, we saw the extension of the Evergreen Line open in the Tri-Cities and connect the northeast sector to the rest of the region. We've already seen substantial growth along parts of its corridor already. My office is situated just 2 blocks from Coquitlam Center and the Evergreen Line, and I've personally noticed a significant increase in foot traffic and accessibility to the businesses. We've also seen more businesses move into the area, and this provides our community with expanded variety of goods and services available to them. Adding B-lines will continue to build these kinds of two-way connections that deliver benefits in both directions. The Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce looks forward to a business and community benefiting from a greater overall community that comes with increased transit ridership. So today, I welcome the new B-line to our community in 2019. Thank you.
Hi there, Sinjin with CTV. The North Vancouver line. I noticed it doesn't go to the ferry. Why not? Horseshoe Bay.
The line at this point would connect, as we pointed out. I think, there's constraints in terms of financing, in terms of demand. There's very good transit service to Horseshoe Bay. now from a variety of different routes that both connect to downtown Vancouver and within the North Shore. So, as we think about those routes, maybe in the future extensions, I know that there's interest in fact, extending the route further east, as a matter of fact. So we want to chase the demand. We want to make sure it's very well used. We want to make sure that each of the corridors on all of the BLine routes meet the needs of the local communities. I think Horseshoe Bay probably well served now, and that might be for the future conversation.
And it looks like, are these all set in stone in terms of the stops and where they're running? When might there be changes before they're actually launched in 2019?
Well, I wouldn't say they're set in stone. As part of today's announcement is we're launching a public process now, working with the city councils. We've been working with all the cities for a long time on these corridors, but we want to start getting some public feedback. So the exact stop locations, many of the different treatments that we want to install with the routes to improve their speed and reliability, priority along the corridor. There are trade-off issues. We need to work very closely with each of the municipalities and hear from the general public. So not quite set in stone yet. Still issues I think we need to resolve within each particular community. But largely, as you can see behind me, those are the corridors where the routes are going to be running. And we know those are very strong corridors today with very, very, very high transit ridership growth potential in the future.
If you are then looking at these routes in terms of having higher ridership on them, sorry, is that? If you're looking at more ridership on these lines, if you're saying they have a high capacity rate, are you then looking at the local transit routes, increasing them, changing those routes around? What's going to happen on the local level once they get to those endpoints?
Well, to a degree, that is part of the planning that we're doing. Each of the corridors is very, very different. We do look at, as Mayor Moore pointed out, the BLine corridors can actually be precursors long-term for higher capacity transit. And just with our SkyTrain system now, the local bus routes, the less frequent routes, the routes that penetrate within the communities do need to connect to the high capacity corridors. So that is part of the planning process, yes.
I have friends that live way out in the suburb areas, and for them it's trouble getting home later at night. Is TransLink looking at in terms of increasing bus times, in terms of when routes will end, or especially with these services, with these BLines, keeping them running? Any sort of thing for late night bus service?
Well, in fact, last year we increased bus service by about 5%. It was really the first aspect to jumpstart the mayor's plan, and compliments to Mayor Moore and the rest of the mayors to really prioritize getting some bus service improvements right away as we continue to work through getting full financing for the rapid transit. Part of last year's service improvements was late night service. So that is something that we have our eye on. We can give you some details. I've got some of our planning staff here if you'd like some details on which routes, but that actually was some of the improvements we made last year.
Saran, going right back to the BLine here, to the ferry, you want public feedback. If you hear from the public that there's demand for it, could you change it before 2019 and allow a BLine straight to the ferry?
At this point, it's not in the scope of that project, no.
There's money? Because, the ferry, a whole whack of people use that ferry, of course, and it's probably high demand.
Understood. I think we've got a fairly robust network to Horseshoe Bay. Certainly, if we get a lot of interest in that, that's something we'll have to take into consideration for possible future phases. Okay, anybody else? Well, thank you for coming out here to beautiful, warm Port Coquitlam. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Catherine. So thank you for being here this morning.